Hey guys, today I'll show you a horror thriller TV series named Suzuki Koji-Real Horror. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The first story begins with Big Mike, who was an arrogant and rude man. He had a girlfriend whom he introduced to others as his mistress. One day, while playing ball with his girlfriend, they discovered a body in the woods near the court. It was an old woman. As Big Mike told his girlfriend to call the police, he didn't forget to snap a photo of the body himself. Ostensibly, Big Mike was in the used car business, but secretly, he was a scammer. He recognized the old woman who had died at the court. She had been one of his many scam victims. He had always assumed the old woman was alone, but it turned out she had a daughter. Now, Big Mike knew that the old woman had a life insurance policy, which meant her daughter would receive a huge payout after her death. Big Mike set his sights on that money, planning to squeeze every last penny out of her. But before approaching the old woman's daughter, Miss Oyama, he needed to meticulously craft a plan specifically for her. Looking at her photo, however, he could tell this woman would not be an easy target. The next day, Big Mike's girlfriend transformed herself into a matchmaker from a dating agency and appeared before the woman. The girl explained that their agency had a severe shortage of female members compared to male members, and their current women were so busy they were going on several dates a day. Therefore, she sincerely invited the woman, Miss Oyama, to become a member. She wouldn't have to pay a thing. In fact, she would be paid $30,000 for each date she went on. It sounded almost too good to be true. Upon hearing this, Oyama fell silent. She was already 40 years old. A woman of 30 is like a wolf. She had reached this fierce age, but had never even held a man's hand. Her mother's failed marriage had left a deep impact on her, and she had once thought she would just live her life alone, believing the tough times would eventually pass. But the dark, lonely nights were too hard to endure. Although she had a masculine appearance, deep down, she was still a woman. She often fantasized about being cherished and loved by a man with strong hormone arms, cuddling in his embrace, having his annoying children, and growing old with him in a respectful and loving relationship. But reality was cruel. She was approaching 50, and that man had yet to appear. So at that moment, Oyama began to wonder if she could really go on a date with a man. Hearing her doubts, the girl, against her conscience, assured Oyama that she definitely could. The following evening, Oyama, meticulously dressed up, stood at the pre-arranged meeting spot, but she waited for a long time with no one in sight. Just as she was about to lose hope, an expensive car pulled up in front of her. A man who wasn't particularly tall got out. It was Big Mike. He was very different today, his usual arrogance replaced by a humble and polite demeanor, clearly a deliberate disguise. He approached Oyama, apologized for being late due to work, and gave her a fake name. He then gallantly escorted her to the car, leaving Oyama feeling quite flattered. On the way to the restaurant, Big Mike mentioned that this was his first blind date, and he was a bit nervous, asking for her forgiveness if he did anything inappropriate. What could Oyama say? After all, it was her first time too. Later at the restaurant, Big Mike shared a fabricated story. He claimed his parents had divorced when he was very young and that he and his mother had depended on each other, enduring a life of hardship. Through his own ambition and hard work, he had achieved some success. But just then, his mother passed away, which became the biggest regret of his life. After his mother's death, Big Mike said he was lost in grief and had no heart for romance. It was only today, after many years, that he had finally emerged from his sorrow and decided to try dating. This carefully crafted story struck a chord with Oyama. She shared that she had also lived alone with her mother, who had also passed away suddenly not long ago. Though she was heartbroken, she knew she had to try dating. In short, Big Mike presented himself as someone seeking marriage, and he expressed his satisfaction at meeting such a sincere woman as Oyama. The two had a pleasant conversation, and after dinner, Big Mike gallantly drove her home. But as soon as Oyama turned her back, Big Mike took off his glasses, dropped his disguise, and his face filled with disgust. He handed his phone to his friends, showing them a photo of Oyama just out of the bath. His friends all laughed, remarking that she looked just like a man, all wet. Seeing this, their respect for Big Mike grew, all feeling that he was earning this money the hard way. On the fourth day, Big Mike and Oyama went on another date. Big Mike was teaching her how to play a ball game, but the two looked completely mismatched together. Oyama gripped the club, tensing her arm muscles, clenching her jaw, and with a powerful swing, she stunned Big Mike, who was standing nearby. This woman was incredibly strong. To put it bluntly, if they got married, it was hard to say who would be the victim of domestic abuse. Through their conversation, Big Mike learned that Oyama had been a javelin thrower in her school days. Looking at her well-built physique, it was clear she hadn't been idle in the years since graduation. Still, this didn't deter Big Mike from his plan. During their date, Big Mike pretended to receive one urgent phone call after another, creating the illusion that his company was in trouble. He then left Oyama there, hastily saying he had to rush back to the office. In reality, he went to a hotel with his girlfriend and checked into a room. His girlfriend asked if it was a bad idea to leave like that. Big Mike explained it was all part of the plan, saying that with this type of woman, you can't just keep adding pressure. You have to subtract at the right times. Now, he had given Oyama the impression that his business was failing, making her worry about him. This would give him the opportunity to talk about feelings with her. Talking directly about money was too vulgar and a desecration of their relationship. Of course, if she offered the money willingly, that was a different story. Big Mike felt he was just one step away. For that step, Big Mike didn't contact Oyama for a month. Finally, one day a month later, he received a concerned text message from her. The content of the message made Big Mike feel the time was right. He asked her to meet at their usual spot. When they met, Big Mike was driving a beat-up old car. He explained that he had been so busy for the past month, he barely had time to use the restroom, which was why he hadn't contacted her. He told her his company was in trouble and on the verge of bankruptcy, and that he had already sold his car, his house, and all his assets. Hearing this, Oyama was naturally very worried. She asked if there was anything she could do to help. Big Mike replied that there was, in fact, something. They then went to another location. Big Mike told her he had a way to buy some pre-release corporate stock that wasn't yet public. Once the stock went public, its value would multiply many times over, giving him the money to solve his company's crisis. However, he didn't have enough money to buy the stock, calculating that he was short by over $3 million. Of course, it would be best if Oyama had the money, but if not, he would figure something else out. Oyama fell into deep thought upon hearing this, and that night, neither of them went home. After their hormone night together, Oyama was very satisfied with Big Mike's big muscle service and decided to give him the money. Coincidentally, the insurance payout from her mother's death was just over $3 million. When Big Mike heard Oyama agree, he thought to himself that his efforts had not been in vain and decided to add more fuel to the fire. He told her he was doing all this so he could provide a better life for her in the future, to spend the rest of his life with her and build a wonderful home together. Oyama was deeply moved. Seeing Big Mike being so sincere, she decided to tell him a secret. She revealed that her mother had actually been a terrible person who barely cared for her as a child and constantly demanded money from her as an adult. When her mother ran out of money, she ended up with a mountain of debt. In a moment of desperation, Oyama had killed her and staged it to look like a suicide, which was how she got the large sum of money. Hearing this, Big Mike was terrified. He was so scared that the next day, he sent one of his underlings to collect the money instead of going himself. As soon as he got the money, Big Mike immediately changed his phone number, cutting off all contact with Oyama. He had no idea how furious this would make her. A few nights later, Big Mike and his girlfriend were splitting the money. But as the girl was counting it, Big Mike suddenly felt an icy gaze. Following the line of sight, he saw Oyama. The look in her eyes terrified him. Big Mike suggested to his girlfriend that they go out and relax, but the girl said she already had plans and left. Shortly after his girlfriend left, Big Mike received a call from his friends, telling him to get back to the office immediately. He could hear the terror in their voices. They were almost crying like giant babies. Big Mike knew something was wrong and immediately drove over. When he returned to the used car lot, he found it pitch black, which was unusual. Entering the office, he saw his 4 friends dead. It was a gruesome scene. Their bodies were pierced with large iron spikes, making them look like hedgehogs. Big Mike's first thought was that Oyama had been there. He reacted quickly, turning to run, but he was blocked at the door by Oyama herself. She grabbed Big Mike tightly by the chick neck and asked why he had changed his number and why he was ignoring her. She reminded him that he had promised to spend his life with her and asked if it was all a lie. She said that if Big Mike was still willing to keep his promise, she might consider letting him go. But Big Mike, seizing a moment when she was off guard, broke free, picked up an iron rod, and tried to attack her. If Oyama were an ordinary woman, that would have been the end of it. But Oyama was a former athlete. She grabbed the rod with one hand and snatched it from Big Mike. Terrified, Big Mike offered to give the money back, but Oyama didn't lack any money. What she lacked was love. So, ignoring his pleas, Oyama started stabbing at him with the iron rod. Whether intentionally or not, her aim was off, giving Big Mike a chance to get up, hide in a car, and then drive it into her. But even after being hit by the car, Oyama seemed completely unharmed. Big Mike tried to drive away with his smelly butt, but he seemed to have forgotten she was a former javelin thrower. With a running start, Oyama threw the iron rod into the air. It flew straight into the car, impaling Big Mike's big muscles right through. And that's where the story ends. The second story begins with a dentist who frequently visited a certain bar to drink, and each time he would request Hana, the hostess. Because he always ordered expensive drinks, he helped make Hana the top girl at the establishment. He had recently bought a boat, but had been too busy to use it. Now that he had some free time, he planned to invite Hana and a couple of friends to go out on the sea. Hana was hesitant at first, but after a moment's thought, she agreed. The dentist had indeed treated her well and was even planning to marry her. So the next day, the group of 4 set off on the boat. Perhaps because it was her first time on a small boat like this, Hana started to feel unwell after a few drinks. She had no choice but to go down to the cabin to rest. By the time she came back up, the boat had already reached its destination. At that moment, the dentist's friend was fishing, saying he would cook something delicious for them later. But soon, what he hooked wasn't a fish, but a shoe. The moment Hana saw the shoe, her face turned pale. The dentist noticed and asked her what was wrong, but she casually replied that it was nothing. They then started discussing why a child's shoe would be in the sea and considered whether they should report it to the Coast Guard. Hana immediately suggested they just throw it away. At the time, no one thought much of it and agreed to toss it. In truth, the idea of taking it to the Coast Guard was just a passing thought. But ever since seeing that shoe, Hana's mood had been off. Everyone assumed she was just seasick and didn't think much of it. A short while later, the boat suddenly stopped and wouldn't start, no matter what they did. To figure out what was wrong, the male friend volunteered to dive into the sea to check. However, not long after he went under, strange noises started coming from the bottom of the boat. Everyone panicked and quickly pulled the man up by the rope. The man looked as if he had seen something terrifying. His face was blue, and he was trembling too much to speak. After calming down in the cabin for a long time, he told them he had seen a child under the boat who had grabbed at him, and it was horrifying. His description made Hana even more frightened and unwell. The dentist didn't believe his friend's story. After all, how could there be a little girl at the bottom of the sea? That would mean they had encountered a ghost. The friend's girlfriend told the dentist to go down and see for himself, but he was too scared. They had no choice but to call the marina and ask for someone to pick them up. However, after making the call for help, they waited from day to night, but no rescue boat came. When they tried to contact the marina again, their phones had no signal. The girlfriend went onto the deck to look for a signal, only to be shocked to find that they could no longer see land. This was a serious problem, but when they checked the radar, they saw that their boat hadn't moved at all. They had no idea what was going on. Nevertheless, the girlfriend prepared to dive into the sea again to investigate because she wanted to leave this place quickly, but she never got the chance. Soon after she went down, there was an accident. When the dentist pulled the rope up, only the rope came back. The woman had mysteriously vanished. The dentist was stunned. He frantically ran around the boat, searching and calling for her, but there was no response. His heart sank. In such cold weather, after being in the water for so long, she was surely dead. And how was he going to explain this to his friend in the cabin? Just then, Hana saw the shoe again. The moment she saw it, she started to feel sick again and only felt slightly better after drinking a lot of water back in the cabin. That was when she realized the dentist's friend was also gone. She went back on deck to tell the dentist, but he had been on deck the whole time and hadn't seen his friend come up. The dentist and Hana went back to the cabin to search, but after looking for a long time, they couldn't find him. They finally gave up. Suddenly, they heard footsteps on the deck. As they looked up, they saw a pair of stumbling legs. The moment she saw them, Hana's face changed again. The dentist rushed onto the deck, thinking the footsteps belonged to his friend, but he found no one there. Seeing the dentist on the verge of a breakdown, Hana finally confessed the truth. She said she recognized those legs. They belonged to Mayu. She knew that everything happening was Mayu's doing, but the dentist had no idea who Mayu was. Hana didn't answer his question, only muttering to herself that Mayu should be at home, and then she fainted. Seeing this, the dentist forgot all about searching for his friend and quickly helped Hana up. He then tried repeatedly to start the boat again. After his relentless efforts, the boat finally started a short while later. They could finally go home. As the dentist steered the boat, he told Hana to rest in the cabin, but once inside, Hana heard a child's voice from the radio. Terrified, she immediately turned it off, but when she looked up, she saw a child on the glass of the deck house. Hana screamed in a chicken voice and huddled like a duck in a corner, cautiously watching the child. Only after the child was gone did she dare to go up on deck. But now, the dentist was also gone. Before she could even look for him, her phone rang. When she answered, it was a child's voice again, treating her as mom and asking her where she is, when she's coming back, and why she didn't answer her calls since she's hungry. It turned out the woman had a daughter named Mayu, but she had locked her away in another home. This house was filled with trash and filth. The girl was in the innermost room. Hana would visit every 2 weeks, bringing 2 bags of food. She would then seal the doors and windows with tape, forbidding her daughter from leaving the room and absolutely forbidding her from calling. Because of this, no one knew she had a daughter that old. But how the girl had left the house and ended up in the sea, Hana couldn't understand. What she did understand was that she had wronged her daughter terribly. Afterward, Hana locked herself in the cabin below deck, lying there silently, lost in thought. Before she knew it, tears were streaming down her greasy face. The next moment, the cabin door opened. It was the girl. She walked in, but this time, Hana was no longer terrified or afraid. Instead, her expression was filled with gentle maternal love. But it was too late, wasn't it? And that's where the story ends. The third story begins with the female protagonist, May, hearing a strange noise outside her door at 12:43 a.m. Curious, she turned on her security monitor and saw that a new neighbor seemed to be moving in next door. Seeing all the bags and boxes, she became suspicious. The next day, she told her husband about it, but he thought it was nothing, mentioning that they used to move in the middle of the night all the time in college. Her husband was about to leave on another business trip. May was heavily pregnant and close to her due date, so before he left, her husband prepared a gift for her sister, hoping she would come over and take care of May more often. After seeing her husband off, she suddenly noticed her new neighbor, the wife, sitting in her living room. She looked a bit odd, but May didn't pay much attention. Since becoming pregnant, she had been exercising daily to build up stamina for a smooth delivery. But when she returned home, she noticed the neighbor's wife was still sitting in the exact same position. This started to bother her. So, back in her own home, she turned on the monitor and started watching her. She stared from day to night, and the neighbor's wife didn't move an inch. Just then, her sister called, saying she would come over tomorrow and asking if her sister needed anything. But just as May was about to say something, she saw the neighbor's husband return. She hastily hung up and continued to watch. However, as soon as the man entered the house, he drew the curtains, preventing her from seeing anything. But May didn't give up. The next day, while hanging out her laundry, she found an opportunity to peek from upstairs, but she didn't see much. Her sister arrived at noon, and May told her about the neighbors. Her sister asked if she knew what the man looked like, how old he was, or what he did for a living. May thought for a moment and said he was around 40, looked decent, but she had no idea what he did, as they hadn't interacted since he moved in. However, her woman's intuition made her feel inexplicably uncomfortable whenever she saw the neighbor's wife. Her sister joked that a quiet, motionless neighbor was better than a noisy, chattering one. Although it was strange, at least it was peaceful. May thought that made sense and didn't say any more. On the third day, May went out for her usual exercise. On her way back, she almost got hit by her neighbor's car. The fierce, impatient look in his eyes confirmed her intuition. This man was dangerous. When she got to her front door, she saw the neighbor's wife sitting there again, completely motionless. To get a better look, May aimed her security camera directly at the neighbor's window. She then sat on her sofa and continued to watch her. After staring for a long time, she suddenly saw the neighbor's wife's head slump down. This terrified her, and the cake in her hand instantly lost its appeal. In a panic, she called her husband. She wanted to call the police, but her husband advised against it, saying that if the woman was just sleeping, they would be making a false report. Her husband suggested she just keep observing and see what happens, then hung up. Time flew by, and it was 1:32 a.m. May had fallen asleep like a pig on the sofa. She was suddenly awakened by the sound of her neighbor returning. Getting up, she saw the man carrying someone from the passenger seat of his car. Seeing this, she tensed up, her eyes glued to the monitor. When she saw the man carrying something upstairs, she quickly got up and ran to the roof to continue watching. From there, she saw the man struggling with a woman, eventually pinning her heavy body to the ground until she stopped breathing. May was so shocked that she forgot to hide her sexy body. The man, having composed himself, spotted her. It was too late for May to duck down. She quickly crawled back to her bedroom, found her phone, and with trembling hands dialed for the police. At that very moment, her doorbell rang. May quickly called the police. After ringing for a long time with no response, the doorbell suddenly stopped. Then May saw the man standing in front of her security camera, staring at her. Even through the screen, she could clearly feel his murderous intent. She was truly terrified. Fortunately, the police responded quickly and arrived downstairs shortly. The sound of the sirens woke up all the neighbors, who gathered around to see what was happening. Soon, the police came out of the man's house. Seeing that they were about to leave, May rushed over and asked why they were leaving. The police repeatedly explained to her that there was no murder. What she had seen were dolls. The neighbor was just moving his dolls. They told her that if she didn't believe them, she could go and see the man's apartment for herself. So May followed the police into the man's house. As soon as she entered, she saw a doll. It looked so lifelike that she was speechless, but she felt something was off. A doll wouldn't struggle like that, and if it really was a doll, why would the man get so nervous and come knocking on her door after she saw him? The man had an explanation for this. He said he heard her chicken scream and was just going to check on her chicken body. Although May didn't believe his smelly bullshit, the police did. They offered a few words of comfort and then left. The next day, her sister came over and May told her everything that had happened the night before. But her sister also tried to calm her down, suggesting she was probably just overthinking things, perhaps due to pregnancy-related anxiety. Her sister said that it takes all sorts to make a world, and some people just have unusual hobbies. While she didn't know why the man had so many lifelike dolls, it was his personal privacy. She advised her sister to go and apologize, as they were neighbors and it was better not to have bad blood, but May was firm and refused to apologize. Instead, she asked her sister to stay the night, but that was impossible, as her sister had a boyfriend. Finally, unable to resist her sister's pleas, the sister said she would come back around 5 p.m. After seeing her sister off, May noticed the man peeking at her like a weirdo. This made her extremely nervous, and she contacted the security company to install 3 more cameras, each aimed precisely at the neighbor's house. The installer was stunned, repeatedly asking if this was okay with the neighbor. After the cameras were installed, she could monitor the neighbor from all angles. She then dozed off on the sofa. In a daze, she heard the doorbell. Looking at the monitor, she saw her sister had arrived. But before she could open the door, she watched in horror as her sister was killed by the man. Without a second thought, she rushed out to save her sister, only to be killed by the man herself, and then she woke up. She realized it was all a wet nightmare. After waking up, she received a call from her sister, who said she would be there shortly. May got up to prepare some food for her. Time passed, and it was already past 5 p.m., but her sister hadn't arrived. Getting anxious, May glanced at the monitor. To her shock, she saw her sister next door, laughing and chatting with the man. Furious, she went out and banged on his door. A moment later, the door opened. The man, looking confused, asked what she wanted now. May didn't give him a chance to explain and pushed her way inside. However, once inside, she saw that her sister wasn't in the living room. There was only a doll with short hair dressed just like her sister. But she was sure she had seen a living, moving person on the monitor. How could it have turned into a rigid, lifelike doll upon entering the room? May was utterly confused, her mind a mess. Perhaps pregnancy had made her less sharp, and she was now completely lost. Embarrassed, she turned to leave but was stopped by the man. He said he wanted to talk to her and clear up some of her recent misunderstandings about him. He added that if she had any concerns, she could call the police to be present. Hearing his sincere words, May let her guard down. Looking at the room full of dolls, she did indeed need an explanation. So she stayed and sat on the sofa to listen to him. The man explained that he grew up in an orphanage and had never been good at socializing. As a child, he would play with dolls while imagining scenarios. He couldn't shake the habit even as an adult. To be honest, the man's explanation did alleviate many of May's worries. As her sister had said, it takes all kinds. So when the man invited her to his basement workshop to see how he made the dolls, she didn't think twice and went down with him. The basement was spacious and filled with many unfinished dolls. The man continued, saying he had been making dolls for 10 years, but his skills hadn't improved much. Now that May was in his workshop, he wanted to ask her to be his model for once. May quickly refused, saying she couldn't be a model. But the man ignored her and continued, saying that although it wasn't medically perfect, he was sure he could do a great job. May was confused. What did doll making have to do with medicine? The man explained that the dolls upstairs were just a front and no longer satisfied him. He had started using real people now. With that, he pulled the hair of a nearby doll, revealing to May that it was a real person. The man said that securing the head was a big job, but he was confident he would make a great doll out of her. May tried to call the police but was horrified to find there was no signal. This meant her fate as a Barbie doll was sealed. The scene then cuts to later. The woman is missing. Her sister and husband have reported it to the police. Although the police are certain her disappearance is related to the man, they can't find him. The case can only be treated as a missing persons case. With no other choice, the husband has to temporarily quit his job and distribute missing person flyers everywhere. One of these flyers ends up in the hands of the man. But by now he has changed his appearance, making him unrecognizable. As the man returns home, his first wife sits quietly on the sofa while his second wife is busy in the kitchen. As for May, she is in the innermost room, and that's where the story ends. The moral of this story is, don't be curious about your neighbors, and don't go into their hormone-smelling basements. The fourth story begins with a young man named Takashi working at a fast food restaurant. His daily tasks, besides placing pickled plums on meals, involved delivering food with a driver to elderly people. Takashi lived with his mother, and though their life was simple, it was a happy one. During a meal, Takashi told his mother he was saving money because he wanted to go on a trip. He asked for her suggestion on where to go, as he wanted to take her with him. The woman was very touched by this, thinking her son was truly a blessing. The next day, Takashi's delivery route changed. The first stop was the home of an old man with mobility issues. The old man was very welcoming. In a moment of clumsiness, he dropped a handful of photos, scattering them everywhere. As Takashi helped pick them up, he noticed a particular photo. The scenery in it was identical to a scene from his wet dreams. This wet dream had haunted Takashi for years. In it, there was also a girl who would lead him to the middle of a fenced area and point down the mountain. The girl would wake him up and hide him in a closet in their house, and he seemed to be calling her sister. The dream always ended there, waking him with a start. He had always thought it was just a strange dream, but today's photo suggested it was much more than that. And ever since he saw the photo, the girl from his dream had been appearing before him frequently, but whenever he tried to ask her something, she would vanish without traces of her smell. Takashi had wondered if he had lived in the place the girl pointed to as a child, but his mother told him he had lived in their current home since birth. She explained that the strange images in his mind were because of an accident he had when he was 5. The accident had injured his brain, causing his memories of the past to be chaotic. The woman also said that Takashi's father had died like a piece of shit in that accident while protecting him. Every time he heard this, Takashi would solemnly promise his mother that he would protect her just like his father did. But the next day, when he visited the old man again, he couldn't resist asking for the address in the photo. After getting the address, Takashi planned a route and intended to go see the place. However, his mother found out. Takashi's inability to lie was seen through by his mother, and he had no choice but to confess everything. Seeing that she could no longer hide the truth, the woman decided to tell Takashi what really happened. She admitted she had lied to him. His father was not dead, nor was he a hero. He was actually a brutal man. Back then, she couldn't stand his father any longer, so she fled with Takashi to their current home. She claimed the scar on Takashi's head was from his father hitting him. She said that at the time, she only had the ability to rescue Takashi. She was very sorry about his sister. Takashi was devastated by the truth. That night, he stared blankly at the photo. Suddenly, the girl appeared again. She reached out her hand to him, just as she had suddenly pulled him close all those years ago. But just as his hand was about to touch hers, she vanished again. This experience with his sister made Takashi desperate to know the truth. He left a note for the woman and left home. With a map in hand, Takashi rode his Tesla bicycle towards the location. The journey was long, but it couldn't stop his quest for the truth. The next afternoon, Takashi finally found the place. It was exactly as he had seen in his dreams. Upon arriving, he saw the girl again, and at the same time, his missing memories flooded back like a spring. He then followed his childhood memories to what might have been their old house. Standing at the door, Takashi opened it with a mix of trepidation and anticipation. To his surprise, the door opened easily. Stepping inside, he saw the small room and immediately recognized the closet he used to hide in. He also seemed to hear his sister calling his name. Before he could think further, he was interrupted by a voice. Takashi kept repeating his name, hoping the person in front of him would remember him, but he was disappointed. The person mistook him for one of those eccentrics who like to explore old houses. Takashi quickly explained that his father and sister used to live there. The man told him that no one had lived there since the incident. Hearing this, Takashi was desperate to know what had happened there, but the person didn't seem to want to talk to him, closing the door and preparing to leave. But this was the closest Takashi had ever been to the truth, and he couldn't let the man leave so easily. Finally, after Takashi's persistent pleading, the man agreed to tell him what had happened there years ago. The man said that a murder had occurred there. A woman and a young girl were killed on the spot. There was also a boy, but he mysteriously disappeared after the incident. Hearing this, Takashi wanted to know who did it, asking if it was his father. The man didn't understand what he was talking about, replying that there was no father involved. It was just a poor woman living there with her 2 children. As for who the killer was, the man didn't know because the culprit had never been caught. After saying this, he warned Takashi to leave quickly and then left. After the man was gone, Takashi remembered the photo he had just picked up from inside the house. Looking at the three people in it, he could indeed see himself, his sister, and a woman he didn't recognize at all. Recalling the photo of himself and his mother, he finally understood what had felt wrong when he first saw it. One photo radiated motherly love, while the other showed a face full of indifference, looking more terrifying the longer he looked. Staring at that face, Takashi finally remembered all his missing memories. That night, after the young woman had killed his mother and sister, she had come to take him away. But he had refused to go with her, so she had struck him on the head. That blow was what had erased all his memories from before the age of 5. The scene changes, and Takashi is walking home completely devastated. He couldn't believe the truth and couldn't bear to imagine that the mother who had raised him for so many years was the murderer of his real mother. It was too cruel, too much like a soap opera. On the way, he encountered a police officer. When the officer asked him where he was going and what his name was, Takashi was stunned. He didn't know how to answer. The fifth story begins with a man named Matsura, returning home after a long day of work, sitting at the table, drinking a boring beer, and watching a boring Daniel CC show. When he tried to change the channel, his wife strictly forbade it, saying she was a loyal fan of Daniel CC Movie Channel. She then handed him a postcard, saying it was from Mr. Rock. He had moved to Tokyo and wanted Matsura to visit sometime, but Matsura was reluctant. He sarcastically remarked that Rock had probably just built a luxury mansion and wanted to show it off. But his wife persuaded him to go, reminding him that they had been friends for over 20 years. Besides, Rock had helped them out when they bought their house. So, after some thought, Matsura decided to make the trip. The next day, Matsura followed the address on the postcard. The further he walked, the more familiar the path became. He had been here over 10 years ago. Arriving at the door indicated by the address, Matsura hesitantly glanced at the mail slot under the door and knocked with a sense of dread. The person who opened the door was Rock, but his disheveled state was a far cry from the successful man who could build mansions that Matsura had imagined. Rock warmly invited Matsura in. Sitting down, Matsura demanded to know what kind of joke this was. Where was his apartment, and where were his mansion and his company? Rock sighed and replied that he had sold everything. The company had gone bankrupt. Even after selling everything, they were still deeply in debt. After moving 4 times, he and his wife Sani had ended up here. Tori was a mutual friend of theirs. After graduating from university, Rock started his own business, while Matsura followed his family's plan, got married, and got a job. Tori, however, was very ambitious and wanted to continue his studies for a higher degree. He studied for years, into his 30s, with persistence but without success. His mother, unable to contact him, worried he had died in Tokyo and would often call his good friends Rock and Matsura, asking them to check on him. Back then, Tori would often say how great it was to have friends and that he would repay them one day. The mention of Tori cast a heavy mood over the room. To break the awkward silence, Matsura asked where Sani was. Rock replied that she was in the hospital. Matsura remembered they had a child and asked how their child was. Rock replied that the child had died. Rock often lamented that if his wife had never met him, she wouldn't have had such a miserable life, and Tori wouldn't have had to die. Back when Rock's shop first opened, he had asked Tori to come and help. Sani was the only employee at the time. That's how Tori and Sani met. The moment Tori saw the girl, he fell deeply in love with her. But unfortunately, Sani did not like him. This nerdy guy then started pestering Sani, constantly calling her and asking her out for drinks. After she rejected his dirty hormones, he relentlessly followed her to her apartment building. His behavior terrified Sani. She told Rock about it, who then told Matsura. This led to Matsura confronting Tori, angrily asking him what happened to his plans of studying hard. How could a single woman make him lose his mind, stop studying, and drink all day? Matsura's words were true but harsh. Tori retorted that Matsura should worry about himself, marrying a boring woman, having kids, and constantly compromising. Matsura shot back that a person like Tori would never change, even in 10 years. He said that although his own life was full of compromise, he cherished it. After the argument, he left. That was the first time the two had argued, and the last time Matsura saw Tori alive. A few days later, Tori was dead, ruled a suicide by the police. Matsura attended the funeral and still remembers the look of grief on Tori's mother's face. But now, Matsura couldn't understand why Rock would move here. No matter how poor he was, he should have been able to find another place. What he didn't know was that Rock had his reasons. After marrying Sani, he was summoned here by Tori's ghost. He felt it was Tori's revenge. He didn't want to live there either. They had moved several times, but always ended up back here for various reasons, as if Tori wouldn't let them escape. Matsura couldn't understand what Rock was talking about. Rock continued, explaining that Sani was in the hospital because of Tori. She said she could often see the ghost of Tori, who had died there. It turned out that on the night of his death, Tori had called Sanny, saying he had something important to tell her. Sanny could have just ignored him, but in order to make him give up his obsession and stop his creepy behavior, she went to his place alone late at night. She intended to talk him out of it, but when she arrived, Tori wouldn't listen to her at all, just professing his love for her. He sat there, growing more and more agitated and manic, even producing a marriage registration form and demanding that Sanny sign it. Of course, Sanny refused. She got up to leave, but Tori clung to her desperately. Sanny pulled out a knife, and Tori immediately tried to grab it. In the struggle, Sanny accidentally pushed him, and he fell and was knocked unconscious. But Sanny didn't know that. Terrified, she thought he was dead and called Rock. When Rock arrived, he was also stunned. Then, seeing a rope, he had a sudden idea. He used the rope to hang Tori, trying to stage a suicide. But just as he was halfway through, Tori woke up, but it was too late to stop. So Rock and the weeping Sanny worked together to kill Tori. After it was over, Rock called the police. The police didn't suspect him and ruled the case a suicide, thinking the matter was closed. But now, years later, Rock's family was facing disaster. His company went bankrupt, Sanny was in the hospital, and Rock himself had terminal cancer. He didn't have much time left. He claimed it was Tori's curse. He told Matsura not to disbelieve him, showing him a photo as proof. He handed the photo to Matsura, but Matsura just glanced at it and pushed it far away, as the picture was too terrifying. Now, Rock was asking Matsura to take care of Sanny after he died, because once he and Sanny were both gone, it would be Matsura's turn, because Matsura had also seen it. Hearing this, Matsura didn't argue because he clearly remembered that on the night of Tori's death, he had indeed gone to visit him. As he approached the door, he heard Rock's goose shouts, Sanny's baby cries, and Tori's chicken screams. Peering through the mail slot in the door, Matsura witnessed the horrifying scene. His arrival was also noticed by Tori and Rock. Now Tori was seeking revenge, and of course, he wouldn't let Matsura go. So, as Matsura stumbled out of the apartment, he felt a gaze from above. Looking up, he saw the long-dead Tori, and that's where the story ends. The sixth story begins with Maya and her husband, who had been married for 5 years, but recently they had been fighting and were on the verge of divorce. Maya's husband didn't agree immediately. Instead, he wanted to take Maya to the restaurant where he had proposed to her for dinner. She refused, questioning why he would want to have a final harmonious meal as a couple. With that, she demanded he stop the car immediately. Ignoring her husband's protests, she got out of the car, and tragedy struck. Mitsui was a taxi driver who often worked the night shift, but driving the night roads for so long meant he was bound to pick up a ghost. Mitsui wasn't scared, just resigned, because there was no money to be made from ghost passengers, and reporting it back at the company often led to trouble. But the young girl at the dispatch didn't believe him and warned Mitsui not to drive around with an empty car in the future. Unlike the girl, Mitsui's colleague was a firm believer and would ask him every day about ghostly matters, like which roads were haunted, so he could avoid them. One night, while on his shift, a tapping sound on the car window woke Mitsui up. He got up to open the door, but there was no one outside. Just as he thought it was a prank, Maya suddenly appeared in his car. Mitsui didn't want to take her, but Maya threatened to file a complaint. In the end, Mitsui had to do another fare for free. He wondered if a ghost's complaint would even be successful. When they arrived at the destination, Maya fumbled through her bag and said she didn't have her wallet, saying she would go upstairs to get it. But Mitsui told her not to bother. He told her that since she didn't seem to have realized, he would tell her she was no longer of this world. Maya didn't believe him, but before she could react, she was ushered out of the car. When she returned home, she found the place in a mess, with trash everywhere, and her husband passed out asleep on the floor. Unable to stand the sight, Maya tried to clean up but found her hands were covered in blood. She subconsciously went to the bathroom to wash them, only to see her own reflection with a gruesome injury. Recalling Mitsui's words and seeing her drunk husband and her own memorial photo, Maya finally believed it. She was really dead. The next day, Maya started following Mitsui, not for any other reason than to ask him to pass on a message for her. Mitsui, of course, refused, so Maya pestered him for a whole day, from morning to afternoon, and from afternoon to night, constantly buzzing around him. Mitsui finally summarized her pleas into a few sentences. She was dead, her husband was a wreck, she couldn't rest in peace, and she had some last words for her husband. In the end, Mitsui still refused. After that, Maya had no choice but to go home. Watching her husband's decline, Maya was reminded of her former self. She remembered sitting across from her husband, nagging him about undergoing medical treatment because she wanted to have a child for him. But her husband was worried about the effects of the medication on her body and suggested they let nature take its course, saying that many childless couples were also very happy. But as soon as he said that, they got into a huge fight and parted on bad terms. Thinking back now, Maya was filled with regret and hated herself for her arrogance and unreasonableness. If she hadn't insisted on getting out of the car that day, maybe she wouldn't have died. But it was too late for regrets now. Meanwhile, the kind-hearted Mitsui regretted refusing Maya. He felt he should help her, at least to let her depart without regrets. So he went to the site of her accident and found her. Following Maya's guidance, they found her husband. Her husband mistook Mitsui for a scammer and beat him up. It wasn't until Mitsui mentioned the place where they had their first date, the place where he proposed, and what they ate on their first date that her husband started to believe him and got into the car. After that, Mitsui became a messenger. In Maya's voice, he told the man to eat less takeout, drink less, sleep less on the sofa, smoke less, clean the house more, and shower more often. Also, the memorial photo needed to be changed to a better-looking one. As for her final words, Maya said that a life without children could still be happy. Her death was not his fault. He shouldn't be so depressed. The man said he never wanted to divorce Maya and wished he had died with her. Maya replied that his life could start over. After the man agreed, Maya departed. Mitsui prepared to take the man home, but the man asked to be taken to the place where he had proposed to Maya. He wanted to start over from there. Mitsui started the car and drove away. After they had driven for a while, the man asked Mitsui if Maya was still there. Upon hearing Mitsui say she was gone, the man finally broke down and cried uncontrollably. And that's where the story ends. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.